what on earth is happening with the state of your party. Where do you stand on Brexit? Why have you failed to tackle anti-Semitism? Why are MPs feeling bullied by activists in constituencies that they've legitimately won? And why is Jeremy Corbyn not leading a surge and being the dominant opposition at a time when the government itself is in utter crisis?
That's 5 questions in one go there. I'll try and remember what the first one was.
And presumably questions that keep you awake every night, so you have answers to them.
OK, so I think to take that all in one go, we've obviously had a very difficult summer. The key issue facing the country is Brexit. You've seen the boss of Jaguar this morning say that if this deal isn't right, then there are hundreds of thousands of jobs at risk in my region, the West Midlands region. I've been on this show half a dozen times where I've said we've got to get this deal right because jobs in the Midlands depend on it. And there you've got it, the boss of Jaguar saying to those people that said, if you vote Brexit, your job will be safe in the car industry. He's contradicted that. So we are less than 200 days away from a deal now. And we are saying we've got to get this back on track. Now, the sad thing for me, and this is the other point you take, obviously, as a party, we've been completely distracted over the summer with these allegations of anti-Semitism. And we are not going to rebuild trust with the Jewish community in Britain very easily.
I mean, how extraordinary that someone like Lord Sugar, who's donated lots of money to the Labour Party in the past, would feel that Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, simply doesn't care enough about Jewish people in this country to deal with this properly and knock it on the head. And, I mean, the mere fact we're still talking about it after months and months and months lends succour to that argument, which is if he did care and he did really make it a priority, this would have been dealt with months ago.
Well, you know, this is not for the first time. I will say that I wish we had dealt with it sooner rather than later. And because we didn't deal with it early, it's going to be harder for us to rebuild trust with people like Lord Sugar and other friends of mine.
What do you say to him who says, no, Jeremy Corbyn simply doesn't care about us?
I don't believe that. I think he does care about this and he understands it's a big political problem for us, not least because it's a distraction from dealing with these key issues like Brexit and the crisis in the NHS.
The actress Tracy Ann Oberman tweeted yesterday that she was crying in her car after anti-Semitic attacks because she criticised a speaker who's been invited to the Momentum conference who graffitied on the Warsaw ghetto wall. Eva Jasowicz spray-painted on a wall of the Warsaw ghetto and is due to speak at a Momentum event alongside the Labour Party conference this month. Tracy Ann Oberman's has members of her family.
She lost her grandparents in Warsaw
in
Ghetto.
that graveyard.
I've only just seen. I follow her on Twitter. I think she's very brave, and she's suffered anti-Semitic attacks on social media.
Somebody who graffitis such a precious place. How do they get invited? By Momentum?
Firstly, this is nothing to do with the Labour Party conference. The events, the fringes around the conference, we have no control over. But I'm pretty certain that John Landsman, the boss of Momentum, would recognise how controversial a speaker she would be, this event, and I'm sure he'll be dealing with it today. I've never heard of this woman.
Does this come under the proviso that you've incorporated once you signed up to those International Holocaust recommendations on anti-Semitism? Does the free speech proviso give the Labour Party an opt-out on this?
An opt-out of...
under free speech, is it legitimate to hear from someone like this?
I think just on grounds of taste and decency, then, and particularly the context of the fact that we're dealing with anti-Semitism, suggests to me that she's a highly inappropriate speaker.
But this is where Jeremy Corbyn, surely, as leader of the Labour Party, the moment he hears about something that should come out on camera and say, this is absolutely disgraceful and Momentum should immediately withdraw this invitation. That is called leadership. And the one thing we've not seen from Jeremy Corbyn all summer on this anti-Semitism issue is a shred of leadership.
Well, we've had a very difficult summer on it.
Because he hasn't been leading, Tom.
Well, that's your opinion.
Do you disagree with me? You've already said yourself it's not been acceptable.
Well, my view is we could have dealt with it earlier.
So he hasn't been leading properly?
No, he has been, but there are...
Well, if he had been, you wouldn't still be dealing with it.
I don't mind answering your questions, Piers, but at least let me get three
Well, I'm
words out.
challenging your answers.
Well, yes, but you're challenging my answers before I give them, though.
Okay. All right.
There is a very strong body of opinion in our party that was concerned that this code would prohibit free expression, would prohibit people criticising the democratically elected government of Israel. And of course, we also have had problems with people who have either infiltrated our party from the far right, who are anti-Semitic.
But you have to stamp these people out. You have to basically beat your chest on television in particular and look down the barrel of a camera and say, there is no room for this. I'm stamping it out. And any whiff of this again, and they're straight out. No nonsense, no mucking around, no torturous debates.
There is no room for it. We should have dealt with it earlier. We've hired a new General Secretary who has staked her career on dealing with anti-Semitism in our party. She's been in post for 3 or 4 months now. If I come here again at Christmas and she's not dealt with it, then you may be asking me why she's still in post.
Let's turn to the biggest issue of all, Brexit. We had Jeremy Corbyn on our Good Evening Britain show and looked him in the eye and said to him, what is your position? And he said, absolutely no second referendum, no second vote. We're leaving the single market. We're leaving the customs union. He couldn't have been clearer, right? Is that the position of the Labour Party?
Well, you actually had me on a few days later. What I said to you was, it's not our policy. It wasn't in our manifesto. We've never called for a second referendum. However, if Parliament cannot come to a decision on any deal, then it might be an option that has to be enacted. But our preference, as John McDonnell has been saying...
But that's one... I mean, you're the wrong guy to use this phrase with, but it's like having your cake and eating it. You've probably had a cake in a year. But that is being all things to all people. I watched John McDonnell last night being interviewed, and he was all over the place on this because he wasn't prepared to say, this is what we want to do. And again, it comes down to leadership. The Labour Party should be united now in their opposition and say to the country very clearly, either we want a second vote or we don't. Not, well, we may or we may not, depending on how the wind's blowing.
What we're saying to people, and John McDonnell was very clear about this yesterday, our preferred option is Parliament takes the decision. And if you cannot, and if Parliament cannot come to a conclusion, our preferred option, and that is, let's have a general election, right? You've had 50 Tory MPs last night plotting the downfall of their Prime Minister. It seems to me that what's actually the problem is that we've got a government that doesn't have a working majority. And in those circumstances, the only way you deal with that is with a general election.
So hang on, so Theresa May comes back with the deal to Parliament.
Well, if we have a general election, because she can't deliver her deal, then for 5 weeks I'll be on this show putting Labour's position. And we'll have to tease out all the arguments around the deal.
So will you vote against her deal, whatever it is, in order to trigger a vote of no confidence in a general election?
We need to see what the deal is. And, you can't blame me for not having a position on a deal that doesn't exist yet.
What do you think of the Chequers plan?
I think the Chequers plan, there are some good bits, there are some bad bits. We've said before that what we want is, you're going to jump straight down my throat before I finish my sentence, a jobs first deal that protects workers in the West Midlands at Jaguar.
Staying in the customs union.
That means a form of customs union that allows us to trade, and it also means sort of understanding the benefits of the single market.
I just wonder if you're being slightly disingenuous, because if you want a general election, your incentive would be to force a general election, which would be whatever deal she brings back, you would vote against it, knowing she doesn't have a majority, and therefore that would trigger a vote of no confidence.
Well, when you're in opposition and you don't have the power to do the deal, it's incumbent on us to examine what that deal looks like and weigh up whether it protects those workers that the Labour Party was founded on to represent. But it does seem to me, if you actually look at the prevailing politics, we've got a Prime Minister who is so weak now she can't carry her own MPs. She's effectively not in government. And that's a constitutional crisis as well as a Brexit crisis. And so, John McDonnell was right to say the way you resolve this is by a general election. If you can't get to that, if she's not going to give us a general election, then there is a tiny option of putting the deal to the people. And it's not unreasonable to keep that in as an option, in my view. I think we do need to sort of keep that in the back pocket.